Hey, this is Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society Podcast, reminding you that this podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out all the other great podcasts on the network at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, President of the Non-Threat Assassination Squad, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. All too often, gun owners and gun culture are portrayed in the worst possible ways in the media. This podcast aims to counter that narrative by shining a light on the members of gun culture who are involved in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, while IDPA members make up just a tiny fraction of the overall gun-owning public, I think they're a representative cross-section of that demographic, and this podcast is about them. Today, you're going to meet one of these awesome people. For the reloaders in the audience, I've got a question for you. Have you ever ordered reloading supplies online? If so, who do you call when you need help or you need something special? When you call, do you talk to a customer service rep or can you talk to the owner? Well, if you'd prefer a personal touch and great customer service, talk to my friend Jim Swindle at US Reloading Supply. Jim is a retired law enforcement officer who's been reloading since 1972, and he founded US Reloading Supply back in 2014 as a family operated business focusing on helping shooters get the components that they need at the best prices. If you've got a special order, large quantities, or something you can't find at another website, call them for a quote and they will help you find what you need at a great price. Get all the top brands, get 100% satisfaction guarantee, never pay sales tax, and get free shipping on all non-hazmat items. Check them out online at usreloadingsupply.com. That's usreloadingsupply.com. Or call them today, 941-451-7357, and tell them you heard about it on Unload and Show Clear. Our special guest today is Stan Hein from Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin. Stan, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
Well, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Sturgeon Bay.
Well, I work for a major cable company. Used to be called Charter Communications, now called Spectrum. And I've been doing that for over 6 years now. And just moved into a new position. And I'm currently at training in a hotel room down in Madison, Wisconsin, while we're doing this. So,
well, I appreciate you taking the time on your trip to do this. Tell us a little about how you got started with guns. Where did you grow up, and were you around guns as a child? Were you introduced to them as a kid by your parents, or is that something that you developed an interest in later on?
no, actually, I've been around guns all my life. I grew up in Sturgeon Bay, and then actually I started with trap shooting. My dad started us at trap shooting when we were 11 or 12 years old. So that's how I got my interest in guns. And unfortunately, I didn't really start getting interested into shooting handguns until my late 40s. So I'm kind of new to the handgun, so to speak, but I've been around guns all my life, to include hunting and everything else, as well as I used to do competition trap, ATA, for quite a few years.
Okay. So how did you make that? How did that transition from shotgun to handgun happen? Where did that interest develop, and how were you introduced to handguns?
Well, it's kind of weird. I met my second wife, and she wanted to get interested in shooting. And at that time, all I had was shotguns and rifles. I think I had a 357 revolver. And so we started kind of talking, and then next thing you know, I go on Gun Broker, and what do I find? A pair of Ruger SR 1911s that the guy purposely put on there as his and hers consecutive serial numbers. So I had turned around and I had to buy those. one for me, one for her. And that's where it all started. And then I sort of brought up about competition. So then we started looking at IDPA, USPSA, cowboy action, three gun. And at that time, we didn't have a whole lot of money, extra money to play with. And so it was like, we looked at it and it's like, well, IDPA is going to looks like, other than the guns, going to be the cheapest to get into. And that's how it all got started.
I got you. Okay. Yeah, the barrier to entry is pretty low in IDPA, which is nice. And you already had that background as a kid competing in trap. So you had an interest in competing with handguns once you got into that. What was it like? How did you find that first IDPA club? And what was your first experience like?
Well, unfortunately, the nearest IDPA club when I started was a 2-hour drive from where we live.
Ouch.
Unfortunately, but that's the way it is in Wisconsin. I mean, I live in that big peninsula that sticks out into Lake Michigan, and everything is about 2 hours to the west of where I live to go to the nearest club to shoot.
Gotcha.
So it was no big deal. We found Ripon IDPA, and it just so happened that they had an introduction to IPA course scheduled. So we signed up for that, and that's where it all started. And I've been hooked ever since.
At least you didn't drive 2 hours and show up and find out they were shooting a classifier that day. That would have been awful.
No, it was actually really good because they started with, the basic rules. And then after that, they took us to the range, for actually range time, and to get us used to moving with the gun, executing a reload. And I mean, it was just a very informative class. And it was like, we got to continue to do this. This is actually fun.
So what do you remember about the first local match that you went to where you were actually competing for the first time?
Well, again, that was down in Ripon. Actually, I thought it was fairly easy. And then,
really?
Yeah, because there wasn't a lot of moving targets and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so this was my first year. So my really only introduction to it was just the local matches, and then I signed up for the state match, Wisconsin state match.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really find that match all that difficult either. So then I made the mistake of signing up for the Great Lakes Regional in Saginaw, Michigan. That is where I had an eye-opening awakening. And so like, oh my God, I have not seen this kind of stuff before. And it was just totally just mind-boggling. I mean, there was targets that if I got one round off on them, I got one round off on them. I mean, they were just that fast. And then after that match, I got to know the match director. I got to know the assistant match director. And I've been going back to the Great Lakes Regional ever since.
So you mentioned that you said at the time the closest club was 2 hours away. Has that situation changed? Have you found something closer, or has something been established closer to you?
No. Nope. I'm still driving 2 hours and 10 minutes for the nearest match.
So what is so how often are you making that trip? How often are you going to the local matches, and how often do you try to make sanction matches every year?
Well, sanction matches, I normally am doing 7 to 8 sanction matches a year in IDPA.
Wow.
I go to the local match, it's once a month. So I go down there once a month, but I also shoot USPSA. And there's 2 USPSA matches at the Ripon Club every month. So I'm going down to Ripon about 3 times a month just to go shoot a local match.
Gotcha. What's your favorite division and currently, and what firearm are you competing with most often?
My favorite division in IDPA is CDP, and mainly I shoot a 1911.
Right.
All last year, I shot my Springfield XDM,
So
and I
you've gone back to that first gun that you bought, the first handgun you bought, basically.
yes, I still like my 1911. I just kind of switched it up a little bit because I bought a new XDM in a 45. So I was like, well, I'm going to shoot this year. And second to the last match of this year, I finally got a bump to expert in CDP.
Nice. What's the practice routine like currently? What is you've got a 2-hour drive to local matches. What's your practice routine like? Dry fire, live fire, that sort of thing. How often are you practicing, and what sorts of things do you work on?
Well, it's not so much the live fire until I go to the match because there's really not a range that I can have access to where I live. So it's a lot of dry fire. And it's pretty much I practice getting that gun out of the holster the same way every time, good grip, and then just target transitions is what I mainly practice. Because I catch myself a lot of times reaching for the gun and just getting a real bad grip. So as long as I keep practicing the grip and then presenting the gun to the targets and target transition, everything else kind of falls into place.
So over the years, talk about you're now I'm looking back at your profile here. You're a safety officer now? Is that right? Did I
Yep,
see that right on your
I'm a
profile?
chief safety officer. Yes,
We're a chief safety officer.
yes.
So talk about the motivation to get involved as a safety officer and to go and get certified, and then to actually work matches. What made you what got you interested in doing
Were
that?
the lack of safety officers at the local clubs. That was the big thing, and then people that actually knew what the rules were. So then,
Right.
it was, I took the safety officer course and then just graduated from there, and was really to help out the local club. And then it just expanded from there because now I just started having fun being a safety officer, and I got to learn and unfortunately got to,
Right.
I'm not going to say memorize the rule book, but became very familiar with the rule book. And it just went from there. And then they were looking for chief safety officers for the Wisconsin state match a few years ago. So, I got in contact with the local area coordinator and filled out the application. And I've been a chief safety officer ever since, which kind of helps out because I do design a lot of stages for out of state matches. And it's kind of nice to design a stage for a different state match and
Very
then
cool.
get to go there and work it. The nice part about working a lot of the out of state matches is I don't pay for the match. So the match is free. It only costs me, gas. And if they let me take my camper, they let me camp right on the campgrounds. So that's pretty much what it's costing me, gas and food. And also, what I like about being a chief safety officer is I get to see everybody come through that match. I get to talk to everybody, and that's
Right.
the best part.
True.
And then at the end of the day, when you got other safety officers that come from other clubs, and especially if you get a chance to work with them, and then next thing you know, you're getting an email to have you personally invited to another match to be a CSO. I've had that happen before. And to me, that is
Right.
got to be one of the greatest accomplishments that somebody can have is to be personally invited to be a CSO at a brand new match.
The acknowledgement that you've done a good job and people recognized it, and they want that quality of safety officer work at their match. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So talk about shooting matches, you talked about the first matches that you went to, even that first Wisconsin State match, and how it seemed fairly easy to you, and then how things, your eyes were opened at the regional. What kinds of stages do you like? Do you like? Some people have an affinity for, oddly enough, standard stages. Some people like things with lots of movers. Some people like stages where they have to move a lot, or really technical stages where you have to plan them out really carefully. What do you like?
Well, I can tell you what I don't like, and that's standard stages. For whatever reason, those I shoot the worst on a standard stage. I have no idea why. Easiest stages, and I just cannot shoot them. And unfortunately, I've been to a lot of matches where it came down to the standard stage of a make or break between first and second place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I just don't, I don't like standard stages. I like stages where there doesn't have to be a lot of movers, but yet I want to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
I like the movement, and I'm really starting to like the new IDPA rules, as to where now it's given me as the shooter the option of when I want to execute a reload without
Mm-hmm.
having it basically being dictated.
Right.
So I'm liking the new rules. A lot of the subjectivity of cover calls have been taken out now.
Yup.
So I think IDPA is going in the right direction. I don't think we're 100% there yet, but it's on the right track. So I like something with a lot of movement, and I like moving targets. I mean, because that is
Right.
the challenge of the stage.
Talk about over the years that you just started shooting, what, 2012. So you've been at it now for 6 years. Over those 6 years, is there any particular match that stands out in your mind, or that had a particularly, was a particularly fun match, or had a particularly odd or difficult stage, or where you just had a really good performance? Is there one or two stories or moments like that that stand out that you can tell us about?
Well, I can tell you, out of all the matches I've been to, everyone has a memorable stage, whether it be the Backstoppers in Missouri,
Mm-hmm.
Iowa, standing on, and you actually climb into a boat,
Yep.
and on the start signal, you release the lever, and the boat is actually floating down the river,
Mm-hmm.
and you're engaging targets as you're moving in a boat.
Yep.
So, I mean, Indiana's always put on a good match. Illinois puts on a really good match every year. Wisconsin is getting to be a lot better than what it used to be as far
Mm.
as their matches. Great Lakes Regional always puts on a good match. And that's the reason why I go back every year to those matches, is because it's fun. They they make at least one or two stages a very memorable stage. And
Well, tell us.
it's hard to say which one is better, because they're all good. That's why I go back every year.
Was now, so I guess you just sort of answered my next question. I was going to ask you, what is it about the Great Lakes Regional that makes it so memorable and so special? Is it the stage design? Is it the proficiency with which it's run? Is it, or what is it about it that keeps you going back to that particular match? Is it is it stage
It
designs? Is it the flow of everything, or is it all of the above?
Yeah, and well, it's all the above, plus the people that are running that match. I mean,
Hmm.
between Tanya and Ted and Steve, I mean, those guys just put on one good match. And, just the flow of it. I mean, you're actually going around a big hill that was actually dug out from the coal mines. And so all that stuff from the earth is what you're shooting into. So you're actually going around a big hill, and that's the range. And they just put on one heck of a good match every year.
And give
And
a
it's worth
shout out
going back.
to the club and the people who put the match on. Give us their names and the name of the club.
Linwood Bay Sportsman's Club, who sponsors the match every year with the match directors, and it's the Great Lakes Regional in just outside Saginaw, Michigan.
Well, there's one question that I always ask, but 90% of the time I get boring answers because it's an odd question. But every now and then you get a gem, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Besides the usual stuff, the gun and holster and mag carriers and ammo and that sort of thing, is there anything that you absolutely have to make sure that you have in your range bag when you go to a match? Is anything unusual at all?
Yes. I have to wear my Green Bay Packer hat. That is my trademark. When I go to a match outside of the state of Wisconsin, I always wear my Green Bay Packer hat.
Very good. See, every now and then you get an excellent answer. Is it the lucky charm, or is it just sort of the trademark that lets everybody know who you are?
It's just to let everybody know I'm a cheesehead. Plain and simple.
Very good.
So sometimes it brings me luck, sometimes it doesn't, but it doesn't matter. I'm a cheesehead anyway.
There you go. Cheesehead for life.
That's right.
So as we wrap this up, you've been doing this for 6 years. You've gotten steadily more involved. You to the point that you travel. You do a lot of chief CSO work out of state, and you're designing matches. You're driving 2 hours to local matches. What is it through all of this? What is it about IDPA, about the sport that you're passionate about? What is it that you love about IDPA that keeps you doing it?
It's the people that come to the matches, whether they're new shooters, whether they've been around for the longest time. It's the people that just keep coming back year after year. And that's the nice part about it is because the more people that you see at all the matches, you just become friends with them after a while. Even if it's just a match friend, you see them at all the different matches throughout the Midwest, in my case. But you just bond because of this sport. And that's the nice part about it. It's the people.
Yep. It's like a big extended family reunion with sporadic gunfire.
That's correct. And that's what keeps me coming back year after year. It's because I have fun doing it. And I have fun meeting everybody when I go to a match.
Well, Stan, thank you so much. I really do appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're busy with training and you're away from home. I appreciate you taking the time to share some thoughts with us, and hope to see you down the road on the range in the future.
Yep, hope to see you too. Thank you.
All right, that's all we've got for you today. Thank you so much to our special guest for coming on the show. If you know somebody in the IDPA community who deserves some recognition, I'd love to talk to them. Send me an email at Lloyd, LLOYD, at unloadpodcast.com. Check out the show notes for today's episode and listen to past episodes at unloadpodcast.com. And if you like what you hear on the show and you'd like to support us, help keep the lights on, pay the bills, we would love your support. Visit patreon.com/unload and make a small monthly contribution to help continue what we're doing here. Tune in again next week for another edition of Unload and Show Clear.